The morning light spilled softly through the tall glass windows of the Grand Conservatory of Music. The building was silent except for the faint echo of a violin somewhere down the hallway. It was the kind of silence that held meaning, like the world waiting for the first note of a song. Eli Turner pushed his mop slowly across the marble floor, humming quietly to himself. He always started his day before the students arrived. He liked it that way. Just him, the scent of polish, and the quiet hum of old music drifting through the walls. The academy was a place where dreams were shaped, where young musicians chased perfection. Eli didn't mind being invisible in that world. He had learned to find peace in the background. But that morning, the sound coming from the main rehearsal hall caught his attention. The notes were sharp, full of pride and fire. Someone was practicing with intensity, someone good. Eli leaned his mop against the wall and followed the sound. Inside the grand hall stood a young man with slick black hair, wearing an expensive suit, though it was barely 7 in the morning. His name was Victor Lang, one of the most promising violinists in the country. Everyone at the conservatory knew him. His talent was undeniable, and so was his ego. His music was bold, flawless, and loud, like he wanted the world to remember every note. Eli watched from the doorway for a moment, not wanting to interrupt. Victor's bow moved so fast it almost blurred. The melody filled the empty room like sunlight. When Victor reached a high note and let it linger, Eli couldn't help but hum softly, following the rhythm without even realizing it. It was just a habit. Eli had always done that. When something moved him, the music would spill out of him before he could stop it. But this time his quiet hum didn't go unnoticed. Victor stopped playing and turned sharply. His eyebrows arched as his eyes found Eli standing near the door, mop in hand. "What are you doing there?" Victor asked, his tone sharp and cold. Eli straightened up, suddenly aware of how small he must have looked in his faded uniform and worn-out shoes. "Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you," he said softly. "You play beautifully." "I was just listening." Victor narrowed his eyes. "Listening?" He let out a small laugh. "You mean spying? You think a janitor can understand what real music is?" Eli smiled awkwardly, trying to diffuse the moment. "Music's for everyone, isn't it?" The violinist tilted his head, smirking. "Not this kind. This is art, not background noise for cleaning floors." Eli felt the sting of the words but didn't show it. He had heard worse in his life. He just nodded politely. "You're right. I'll get back to work." But as he turned to leave, Victor called out again, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Wait, what were you humming just now?" Eli paused. "Just the melody you were playing," he replied. Victor raised a brow, clearly amused. "You think you can hum my piece correctly? Go ahead, let's hear it." Eli hesitated. He didn't want trouble. But something in Victor's tone, half challenge, half mockery, made him hum a few bars quietly. It wasn't loud, but it was perfect. Every note in place. The phrasing gentle, almost soulful. Victor's smile froze for a moment. He didn't expect that. Then he laughed, a short mocking laugh. "Not bad. For a janitor," he said. "But next time, stick to your mop. Leave the music to people who actually understand it." The words echoed in the hall, cutting through the air like a sharp chord. A few students entering from the side doors laughed softly, hearing the end of the exchange. Eli could feel their eyes on him, curious, pitying, amused. He didn't look at them. He just gave a small nod, picked up his mop, and walked out. As the doors closed behind him, Victor raised his violin again and began playing even louder, as if to erase the moment. Eli went back to the corridor, his steps slow. The sound of Victor's music chased him, sharp and proud. He took a deep breath and kept moving, pushing his cart down the hallway. He had work to finish before the morning rush. For most people, being insulted like that might have started a fire of anger. But for Eli, it only brought a quiet ache. Not because Victor was wrong, he was a janitor, but because once upon a time he hadn't been. Years ago, long before the mop and the uniform, Eli had been a pianist. Not world famous, not even well known, but good. Good enough to make people stop and listen. Music had been his life. He used to spend hours at the piano, fingers gliding over the keys until the sun disappeared. He played in small concerts, weddings, anywhere he could. Those were simple days filled with hope and sound. Until life changed, Eli never talked about what happened. Not to anyone. But someone had been taken from him, and with that loss, music had become too painful. So he stopped playing, stopped performing, stopped living the way he used to. The piano that once filled his home with light became a silent piece of furniture. And when bills piled up, he took the first job that came his way, the janitor position at the very same conservatory where he once dreamed of teaching. That was almost 15 years ago. Now, every day, he swept the floors where young talents practiced. He emptied bins full of discarded sheet music. He polished the stage that held grand performances he could only watch from the shadows. But he didn't complain. In some quiet corner of his heart, he was still grateful to be surrounded by music, even if it wasn't his anymore. Later that morning, when the students flooded in, Eli was already outside sweeping the courtyard. He could hear laughter, instruments tuning, and the faint chatter about auditions coming up that weekend. Everyone was excited. Everyone was chasing something. Eli smiled at the thought. Around noon, Victor walked by with a small group of admirers. They were laughing loudly about something, maybe a joke, maybe someone's mistake in rehearsal. When they saw Eli cleaning near the fountain, Victor grinned. "Hey, Maestro Mop," he said. "Hear that new concerto? You should try humming that one next." The others laughed again. Eli looked up for a second, met Victor's gaze, and smiled. Not a bitter smile, just a quiet one. "I'm sure it's beautiful," he said. Victor shrugged. "Wouldn't expect you to understand it anyway." And just like that, he was gone. Eli leaned on his broom for a moment, watching them disappear inside. He wasn't angry. He knew people like Victor, young, gifted, sure that the world revolved around them. He used to be a little like that too, before life humbled him. When the sun dipped low and the last of the students left, Eli stayed behind to finish his rounds. He wiped the piano benches, swept under chairs, and gathered the programs left behind after rehearsals. In the empty auditorium, the air felt different, so still you could almost hear the ghosts of earlier melodies hanging in the air. He paused near the grand piano in the center of the stage. It gleamed under the dim light, untouched now. He ran his hand lightly over the keys, feeling the smooth coolness beneath his fingers. His heart gave a small, painful twist. He hadn't played in years. He sat down slowly on the bench, glancing around as if someone might catch him. Then, almost without thinking, he pressed a single key. The note rang out, soft and lonely. Then another. Then another. His fingers moved awkwardly at first, rusty from time, but the muscle memory was still there, hidden deep inside him. Before he realized it, his hands were flowing across the keys. The sound filled the empty hall, not loud, not showy, but warm, full of something real. It wasn't a famous piece, just something he used to play late at night for his daughter when she couldn't sleep. A gentle tune, simple but full of love. For those few minutes, Eli wasn't a janitor anymore. He was just a man speaking the only language he ever truly knew, music. When the last note faded, he sat there quietly, staring at the piano. A small smile touched his lips, but his eyes were glassy. He stood up, wiped his hands on his shirt, and whispered softly, "That's enough for today." He didn't notice that someone had passed by the doorway a few minutes earlier, a young student who had paused, drawn by the sound. She had recorded a short clip on her phone, thinking it was one of the professors practicing late. That recording would soon make its way through the conservatory halls. But for now, Eli just locked the door behind him and stepped out into the cool night air, unaware that his quiet, hidden talent was about to change everything. The next morning, the conservatory buzzed louder than usual. Students hurried through the halls, their voices overlapping like 100 small melodies. The talk wasn't about classes or auditions this time. It was about a mysterious recording that had appeared overnight. Someone had shared a short clip in the school's group chat. It was only 2 minutes long, just a quiet piano piece recorded from outside the auditorium. The music was gentle but powerful, full of emotion. Every note carried something different. Sadness, love, and hope all woven together. Nobody knew who played it. The post simply said, "Whoever this is, they're incredible." By the time Eli arrived for his morning shift, everyone was talking about it. He had no idea, of course. He started his day the same way as always, sweeping the lobby, mopping the back hallway, greeting students who nodded politely but never really looked at him. He liked it that way. He didn't expect attention. He didn't need it. Inside the cafeteria, a group of students gathered around a phone listening to the mysterious music. "It doesn't sound like any of the professors," one said. "And it's definitely not Victor," another laughed. "Too emotional for him." The group laughed, unaware that the man responsible was quietly cleaning tables just a few feet away. Later that day, Eli overheard two teachers discussing it near the front office. "I've never heard someone play like that," one said. "It's raw. Not perfect, but human. It feels like it comes from the heart." "Could be an old recording," the other replied. "Maybe from a guest performer." Eli smiled to himself as he pushed his cart past them. He didn't stop to listen longer. He didn't realize they were talking about him. By the afternoon, the recording had reached almost everyone in the building, even the academy director, Mr. Alden. A quiet, serious man with silver hair and a deep love for music. Mr. Alden played the recording several times in his office, eyes closed, lost in thought. When it ended, he leaned back in his chair and whispered, "Whoever played this understands what music really is." Meanwhile, Victor Lang was furious. He had been practicing all morning when he heard the recording from one of his classmates. "They're saying this came from the school," the student told him. "Maybe even from your hall." Victor listened with his arms crossed. His pride didn't like what he heard, not because it was bad, but because it was too good. The phrasing, the feeling. It sounded like someone who had lived through 1,000 emotions and poured them all into the keys. It wasn't showy or fast, it was honest. And honesty in music was something Victor hadn't yet learned. He snorted when the recording ended. "It's fake," he said quickly. "Probably edited. No one in this place can play like that except me." The others didn't say anything. They just looked at each other, unsure. That night, Eli stayed late again. The halls were empty, the lights dim. He liked the quiet. It reminded him of home, the home he used to have before life took its turn. He was wiping down the stage when he noticed the piano again. It waited there in the center of the room, silent and shining under the dim light. He hesitated, remembering how good it had felt the night before. Just a few minutes of playing had stirred something inside him he hadn't felt in years. A feeling he thought he'd lost forever. So carefully he sat down again. At first he played softly, almost afraid of the sound. But the more he played, the more his hands remembered. His fingers moved smoother, faster, with confidence that had never truly left him. He wasn't reading sheet music. He didn't need to. The melodies came from memory, from emotion, from somewhere deep inside. He didn't notice the faint red light of the small camera above the stage. It was part of the school's new security system, always recording after hours for safety. It caught everything, including Eli's music. He played for nearly an hour that night. Slow songs, broken songs, songs that spoke of love and loss. At one point he stopped and stared at the piano lid, whispering softly, "You'd have loved this one, Lily." His voice trembled. Then he started again, this time with tears quietly slipping down his face. When he finished, he wiped his eyes, locked the hall, and went home. The next morning, the conservatory was even louder than the day before. A longer video had surfaced, this time from the auditorium's security feed. Someone had leaked it, trimmed the footage, and uploaded it to the school's social page. The clip didn't show much of Eli's face. It focused mostly on the piano, but it showed enough. An older man in a janitor's uniform, playing with a grace that stunned everyone. The caption read, "The mystery pianist revealed, and he's not who you'd expect." The post exploded overnight. Students couldn't stop talking about it. Even local newspapers started sharing it online, calling him the janitor Maestro. Some found it inspiring. Others thought it was just a nice story. But inside the conservatory it caused chaos. Victor couldn't believe it. "That's impossible," he shouted when he saw the video. "He's faking it. There's no way a janitor can play like that." But deep down, something in him knew it was real. The emotion in the notes, that couldn't be faked. Meanwhile, Mr. Alden, the director, called a private meeting with a few staff members. "Find out who this man is," he said. "If he works here, I want to meet him." When Eli arrived that afternoon, he could feel the stares. People who used to walk past him now whispered as he went by. Some smiled. Some looked surprised. Others just stared in disbelief. He didn't know why. Not until one of the younger students, a kind boy named Theo, stopped him near the vending machine. "Sir, was that you in the video?" Theo asked, eyes wide with admiration. Eli blinked. "What video?" Theo handed him his phone and pressed play. For a long moment, Eli just stood there watching himself on screen, sitting at the piano, lost in the music he thought no one had heard. When the clip ended, Theo grinned. You're amazing. Eli didn't know what to say. He felt embarrassed, exposed. That was just me. Playing for myself, he said quietly. I didn't mean for anyone to hear that, but it was too late. Everyone had heard. By evening, the director sent for him. Eli walked nervously into Mr. Alden's office, hat in hand. You wanted to see me, sir? He asked. Mr. Alden gestured for him to sit. I did. Please don't be nervous. He paused, studying Eli with kind eyes. That was you, wasn't it? The pianist in the recording. Eli nodded slowly. Yes, sir. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I was cleaning and trouble? Mr. Alden interrupted, smiling softly. Eli, that was the most beautiful performance I've heard in years. You've reminded everyone what music truly means. Eli looked down at his hands. It's been a long time since I played, sir. May I ask why you stopped? The director said gently. Eli hesitated. Then he spoke quietly, each word heavy. I used to perform. I had a small music studio. My daughter loved to listen. She wanted to learn too, but she got sick. And when she passed away, I couldn't play anymore. Every note reminded me of her, so I walked away from it all. The room was silent. Mr. Alden's eyes softened. I'm sorry, Eli, truly, but you never really walked away from music. You carried it with you, and then when you played, it showed. Eli smiled sadly. I only meant to keep it as a memory. The director leaned forward. I'd like you to do something for me. We have the end of semester recital coming up. I want you to perform. No big announcement, no pressure. Just one piece. We'll list it as special guest pianist. You don't even have to tell anyone it's you until you're ready. Eli's heart pounded. Oh, I don't think I could do that, sir. I'm not a performer anymore. Maybe not, Mr. Alden said, but you're a musician, and there's a difference. You play from the heart. That's what this school needs to see. Eli sat there silent, torn between fear and longing. The thought of performing again terrified him. But something inside, something small and stubborn, began to stir. I'll think about it, he said finally. Good, Mr. Alden replied with a smile. That's all I ask. When Eli left the office, the sun was setting outside. The halls were quieter now, but the whispers hadn't stopped. Students looked at him differently, not as a janitor, but as someone they respected, someone mysterious, someone who had lived a story worth knowing. Victor watched him from across the hall, his jaw tight. He didn't say anything, but his pride burned. He wasn't ready to share the stage with a man who cleaned floors. That night, Eli sat on a park bench near his small apartment, watching the city lights flicker like faint stars. He thought of his daughter, of the music she loved, of the man he used to be. For the first time in many years, the silence around him didn't feel heavy. It felt full of possibilities. He looked up at the dark sky and whispered, Maybe one more song, Lily, just one. He didn't know it yet, but that one song would soon make the entire academy and even the proud Maestro himself see music in a way they never had before. The days that followed were unlike anything Eli had ever experienced at the conservatory. For years, he had been invisible, the man who mopped the floors before sunrise and emptied the bins long after everyone left. People had passed him 1,000 times without really seeing him. But now they looked. They smiled. They whispered. They pointed. At first it made him uncomfortable. He didn't understand why everyone was suddenly so friendly. Then he started to notice small things. Students playing softer when he entered a room, or teachers nodding at him as if in quiet respect. That's when he realized the video hadn't gone away. It had spread. What began as a few shares among students had now reached beyond the academy. Local music pages had picked it up, calling it the Janitor's Symphony. The clip had been reposted hundreds of times, each one gathering comments about how moving and honest the music was. Most people didn't know his name. They just knew the image of a man in a simple uniform, sitting at a grand piano lost in his own world. And yet, amid all the attention, Eli kept to his work. He didn't change how he walked or spoke. He still wore the same worn jacket and carried the same mop bucket. He smiled when people greeted him but never brought up the video himself. Inside, though, something had shifted. That night in the auditorium had awakened something long buried. The way his fingers had moved and the way his heart had felt lighter. It stayed with him. For years he had tried to bury the part of him that loved music because it hurt too much to remember what he had lost. But now, that pain had softened into something else. Something almost beautiful. The conservatory director, Mr. Alden, hadn't forgotten their talk either. One afternoon, he found Eli sweeping near the staircase. "You've thought about it?" he asked. Eli looked up, pretending not to know what he meant. "Thought about what, sir?" "The recital," Mr. Alden said with a knowing smile. "You performing?" Eli hesitated. "I'm still not sure, sir. I haven't performed in front of people in a very long time." "Maybe it's time you do," the director said gently. "You've already touched more hearts than you realize. Now it's time to show them who you are." Eli smiled faintly. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of attention." Mr. Alden nodded. "Then we won't tell them. You'll play as our mystery pianist just like the first time. Let the music speak for itself." Eli thought about it for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right. I'll do it." The news of the mystery performer spread quickly through the school. No one knew who it was, but everyone wanted to find out. Some thought it was a visiting artist. Others believed it was one of the professors performing under a hidden name. Victor Lang, however, was not pleased. Everywhere he went, people talked about the janitor pianist. The same people who used to praise him now compared him to the man from the video. He tried to ignore it, but it ate at him. His pride was a fragile thing, and every whisper felt like a challenge. "Why is everyone so obsessed with him?" he said to his friend during lunch. "He's not even trained. He's just lucky." His friend shrugged. "People like stories like that. You know, someone ordinary doing something amazing." Victor's jaw tightened. "I've spent years mastering my craft, and they're acting like some janitor is my equal." That night, Victor practiced until his hands ached. He told himself it was for the recital, but deep down he knew it was for Eli. He wanted to prove he was still the best. Eli began spending quiet moments each evening in the auditorium again. Not for practice, just to feel the piano under his hands. He didn't tell anyone he was performing. Only Mr. Alden knew. Each night he'd play softly, remembering how his daughter used to lean against the piano, swinging her legs as she listened. Those memories no longer made him crumble. They gave him strength. One night, a faint sound came from the back of the hall. Eli stopped playing and looked around, but no one was there. He shrugged and kept going. What he didn't know was that someone had been listening, a first-year student who had recognized his playing from the video. The boy recorded a small part of it and sent it to his classmates with the message, "He's still playing. He's real." The clip spread again, this time without Eli's knowledge. People began sneaking into the auditorium after hours, hoping to catch the mysterious pianist. Some nights he'd finish a song and hear quiet applause from the shadows. He'd smile, shake his head, and call out, "All right, you caught me. Time to go home." The laughter that followed was gentle, not mocking. For the first time in many years, he felt seen, not as the janitor, but as himself. As the recital day drew closer, the excitement grew. Posters went up around the conservatory. The lineup included several student performances, a string quartet, and a special mystery guest. Victor's name was, of course, printed in bold at the top. He was performing a technically complex violin piece, one he hoped would remind everyone who the real prodigy was. On the morning of the event, Eli arrived early, as he always did. He set up chairs, cleaned the stage, and made sure everything was perfect. Watching the students rush around preparing reminded him of how it used to feel. The nervousness, the excitement, the thrill of waiting behind the curtain. Mr. Alden found him checking the lights. "You don't have to work today," he said kindly. "You're performing tonight," Eli smiled. "Old habits die hard, sir. Might as well make myself useful." The director chuckled. "You've done more for this school in 1 week than most people do in a lifetime. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "When you sit at that piano tonight," Mr. Alden said softly, "don't think about who's watching. Don't think about the past. Just play for the love of it." "That's enough," Eli nodded. "I will." By evening, the auditorium was packed. Families, students, and even a few reporters filled the seats. The air buzzed with excitement. Victor stood backstage adjusting his bow tie. He peeked through the curtain and frowned. The director was standing beside the grand piano, smiling as he introduced the show. "Tonight," Mr. Alden said, "we celebrate not just talent, but heart, the soul that turns notes into stories. And later you'll meet someone who reminded us all what music truly means. The audience clapped enthusiastically. Victor's jaw tightened again. "Let's see if this mystery man can really play," he muttered. Back in a small storage room, Eli sat quietly on a bench, dressed in a simple black suit that the director had lent him. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, older, a little tired, but calm. His hands trembled slightly, but his heart was steady. He thought of his daughter again. He could almost hear her voice. "Play for me, Dad." He smiled. "I will." When it was almost time for his turn, Mr. Alden appeared at the door. "Ready?" Eli nodded. "As I'll ever be." Victor went on before him, playing his piece with fire and precision. Every note was flawless, every movement rehearsed to perfection. The crowd applauded loudly, but the energy felt polite rather than emotional. He bowed deeply and walked off stage, satisfied but tense. Then he saw Eli waiting by the side curtain. Their eyes met. Victor smirked. "Break a leg," he said. "You'll need it." Eli just smiled gently. "I'm sure we'll both be fine." When Eli stepped onto the stage, the room went completely silent. Some people gasped softly. Others whispered. They recognized him. The janitor. The man from the video. He took his seat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and rested his fingers on the keys. For a moment, he didn't move. He just closed his eyes, then he began to play. The first notes were quiet, almost uncertain. But soon they grew, warm, deep, and full of feeling. The melody wasn't from any famous composer. It was something of his own, a mix of joy and sorrow, memory and hope. The audience sat frozen. Each note seemed to reach into them, stirring something unspoken. Victor stood in the wings, watching. His expression softened as the music filled the hall. It wasn't about skill anymore. It was about truth. When the last note faded, there was a long silence. Then applause. It started softly, then grew louder until the entire room was on its feet. Eli stood, bowed humbly, and stepped back from the piano. Mr. Alden walked on stage, beaming. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "our mystery pianist, Mr. Eli Turner." The cheers grew even louder. Eli looked out at the sea of faces, students, teachers, and strangers, all standing for him. For a man they had never truly seen before. He smiled, tears glinting in his eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Music doesn't belong to any one person. It belongs to everyone, even those who listen from the shadows." The crowd roared again. In the corner, Victor clapped slowly, his pride melting into something else. Respect. For the first time, he understood that greatness wasn't just about being perfect. It was about being real. As the curtain fell, Eli felt light, as if a heavy weight had finally lifted from his heart. He had played again. Not for fame, not for glory, but for love. And for the first time in years, he felt free. The sound of applause echoed long after the curtain closed. Eli stood behind the stage, still breathing hard, still trying to believe it had really happened. His hands trembled, not from fear now, but from the rush of emotion that came with releasing something he'd kept buried for years. He could still hear them out there. People cheering, clapping, some even calling his name. For so long he had lived quietly in the background, unnoticed, and now the same hall where he had once swept floors was filled with people standing for him. Mr. Alden found him first. "You did it," he said softly, his eyes shining with pride. "That was more than music, Eli. That was life speaking through you." Eli smiled faintly. "I didn't think I could do it again. But when I started playing, it felt like she was there, my daughter. Like she was listening." The director placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. She was. In every note, the other teachers came to congratulate him. Some of the students did too, though they seemed almost shy around him now, unsure how to treat someone they'd ignored for years. But not everyone stayed silent. A young student approached him, holding a small notebook. "Sir," he said nervously, "that piece you played, was it yours?" Eli nodded. "It was something I wrote a long time ago. For my daughter." "It was beautiful," the boy said. "I've never heard anything like it." Eli smiled warmly. "Thank you. Remember that music isn't about showing off. It's about saying something you can't say in words." The boy nodded and hurried off, clutching the words like a treasure. Behind them, Victor stood in the shadows near the curtain. He had clapped with everyone else, but his pride still wrestled with what he'd witnessed. For years he had believed that talent alone made a great musician, But watching Eli play had changed something inside him. The janitor hadn't played to impress, he had played to feel, and the audience had felt it too. Victor's teacher approached him quietly. "You played perfectly tonight," she said, but he played truthfully. "There's a difference," he didn't respond. He just watched Eli surrounded by people, smiling, humble, grateful. There was no arrogance, no pretense. Only music and sincerity. That night after the event ended, Eli stayed behind to help clean up. Old habits die hard. The director tried to stop him, but Eli just laughed. "Can't break tradition now, sir." He worked slowly, humming the melody he'd played earlier, moving between rows of chairs and collecting programs left behind. Every now and then, a few students would stop to thank him again. Some wanted to take pictures with him, and though it felt strange, he agreed with a smile. When the hall was finally empty, Eli sat at the piano once more. The applause was gone, the lights dim. Only silence remained, but it was a peaceful silence, the kind that comes after something right has happened. He ran his fingers over the keys, not to play this time, but to thank them. "We did it," he whispered softly, as if speaking to his daughter through the music itself. "We really did it." The next morning, news spread quickly. Local newspapers and online blogs wrote stories about him. Janitor stuns audience with emotional performance. The hidden musician of Grand Conservatory. The headline seemed unreal to him. He didn't chase the attention. He didn't even read most of the articles. He still showed up early for work, still polished the floors, still greeted the students with his quiet smile. Only now they greeted him back with respect. Even Victor, who had once mocked him, couldn't ignore the change. He walked into the hall one morning, saw Eli cleaning the piano, and hesitated before speaking. "Hey," he said awkwardly. Eli looked up, smiling kindly. "Morning, Victor." The young man shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to say sorry for what I said before." Eli tilted his head, pretending to think. "You'll have to remind me, son. I've been told a lot of things in my time." Victor chuckled, a little embarrassed. "I said you were just a janitor, that you didn't understand music." Eli nodded slowly. "Ah, yes, I remember now." He smiled again, gentle and genuine. "It's all right. We all say things we don't mean when we're trying to prove ourselves." Victor looked down. "You were amazing that night. I've never felt something like that from music before." "Thank you," Eli said. "You're a great player, Victor. You have skill, confidence, precision. But there's one thing every musician learns sooner or later. You can't play what you don't feel. When you stop trying to impress and start trying to connect, that's when the real music begins." Victor nodded thoughtfully. "I think I understand that now." Eli smiled. "Good, you've got time. You're young. Don't rush the heart, it finds its rhythm when it's ready." Victor extended his hand. "Friends?" Eli shook it. "Always." From that day, something changed between them. The pride and arrogance faded from Victor's voice little by little. He began practicing differently, less like someone fighting the notes, more like someone listening to them. And sometimes, when Eli passed the practice rooms, he'd hear the young man playing slower, softer, as if learning to speak a new language. Weeks passed, and the academy began planning for the next semester. Mr. Alden called Eli into his office one afternoon. "I've been thinking," the director said, leaning back in his chair. "We'd like you to stay on, officially, as part of our music faculty. You can still help with maintenance if you wish, but I'd rather see you teaching." Eli laughed softly. "Teaching? I'm not sure I remember how." "You already teach," Mr. Alden said. "Every time someone hears you play, they learn something. That's what a teacher does." Eli looked down at his hands, the same hands that had cleaned floors for years, now being offered a piano again. Not as a dream, but as a duty. He smiled quietly. "If I can help someone find their sound, I'll do it." And so, a new sign appeared beside one of the practice rooms a week later. Eli Turner, music mentor. Students began coming to him in small numbers at first. They didn't call him Maestro or Professor, they just called him Eli. He liked that. He taught them more than scales or timing. He taught them how to listen. One afternoon, he sat beside a nervous student struggling with a slow piece. The boy sighed, frustrated. "I keep missing the rhythm. It never feels right," Eli smiled. "That's because you're chasing it. Music doesn't like being chased. Let it come to you." He placed his hand over the boy's and guided him gently through the melody. The boy's fingers steadied, His breathing slowed and suddenly the notes began to flow. When they finished, Eli said softly, "See? You weren't fighting the song anymore. You were talking with it." The boy grinned, his eyes shining. "You make it sound so easy." "It's not easy," Eli said, smiling. "It's honest. That's the difference." Evenings often found him walking through the empty halls listening to students practice. Sometimes he'd stop by Victor's room. The young man's playing had changed. Less showy, more sincere. One night Victor noticed him standing in the doorway. "Listening again?" he asked, smiling. "Old habit," Eli said. "You're getting better," Victor grinned. "You mean less loud?" Eli chuckled. "That too." They both laughed, the tension between them long gone. Months later, the academy hosted another concert, this time to raise funds for scholarships. Mr. Alden asked Eli to play again, but he declined. This time, he said, "Let the students shine. I'll be here," cheering from the back. He watched proudly as the young musicians filled the stage, their music filling the room. Among them was Victor, who performed a duet with one of the newer students, a slow emotional piece inspired by the melody Eli had played months before. When they finished, the audience erupted with applause. Victor looked toward the back of the hall where Eli stood quietly smiling. Their eyes met for a moment. The young man nodded in gratitude. Eli nodded back. After the concert, Victor found him outside under the soft glow of the streetlights. "That piece I played tonight," he said, "I wrote it for you. For what you taught me." Eli looked touched. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Victor said. "You reminded me what music is really for." "Thank you." Eli smiled and patted his shoulder. "Keep that spirit alive, Victor. Play for the people who can't. For the ones who need to feel something. That's your gift now." They stood there for a moment, listening to the faint echo of music still coming from the building. The night air was cool and the stars above seemed to hum softly with life. Eli looked up at them and whispered under his breath, "You'd be proud, Lily." He walked home slowly, passing the same streets he'd walked 1,000 times before. But now everything felt different. The world seemed lighter, kinder. He had come full circle, not the man who once lost his purpose, but the one who had found it again, quietly, humbly, through music. And though he never sought fame or fortune, his story traveled far. People who heard it felt something stir in their hearts, a reminder that greatness doesn't come from status, but from sincerity. Eli kept working at the conservatory for many years after that, teaching, cleaning, and smiling through it all. Some nights, when everyone had gone home, he would sit once more at the piano and play softly, the melody of love and loss drifting through the empty halls. It was no longer a song of pain. It was a song of peace, and in that music his daughter's memory lived on, forever. The winter wind was soft that morning, carrying the faint sound of bells from the nearby chapel. The academy courtyard was covered in a thin layer of snow, and Eli walked across it slowly, his breath forming little clouds in the cold air. He held a small bag in one hand, the same kind he used to carry cleaning supplies in, though now it was filled with sheet music. It had been a year since that unforgettable night, the night when a quiet janitor reminded the world what real music sounded like. Things had changed at the conservatory since then. Students greeted him warmly every morning. Teachers often sought his advice. Visitors came to see the man who played from the heart, but Eli never let it change who he was. He still swept floors when they needed sweeping. He still fixed broken chairs. And when someone new joined the academy, he introduced himself simply. "Eli, nice to meet you." That morning, the director had asked him to come early. The academy was hosting an anniversary event, not a concert this time, but a small gathering to celebrate the school's people, teachers, staff, and students. When he entered the hall, he saw familiar faces everywhere, laughter, chatter, the smell of hot coffee and pastries. It didn't feel like a ceremony. It felt like family. Mr. Alden spotted him from across the room. "Eli," he called out warmly. "I was just talking about you." Eli chuckled. "Hopefully good things. Always good things," the director said. "Listen, I wanted to tell you. The board has decided to name the new music room after you. The Eli Turner Practice Hall." Eli froze for a second, unsure what to say. "You're joking," he said softly. "I'm not," Mr. Alden replied. "You've done more for this place than anyone. Not just through your music, but through the way you've inspired everyone here." Eli looked down, his eyes misty. "I never wanted anything like that. I just wanted to help. And that," the director said, "is exactly why you deserve it." He smiled and patted Eli's shoulder before walking off to greet other guests. Eli stood there for a moment, taking it in. His name on a door, it still didn't feel real. Later that day, he walked through the quiet hallway that led to the new room. The plaque hadn't been installed yet, but he already felt a sense of calm pride. The room was small, nothing fancy, just a simple space with warm light and a piano in the corner. On the wall, a quote had been painted in gold letters. "Music doesn't care what's written on your name tag, only what's written in your heart." He smiled softly. Those were his own words, the ones he'd said a year ago after his secret had been revealed. He hadn't realized anyone remembered. He placed his bag down and sat at the piano. His fingers hovered above the keys. He wasn't sure what he wanted to play, but his heart knew. Slowly, gently, he began to play the same melody, the one he'd written for his daughter all those years ago. The notes filled the small room like a whisper. There was no audience now, no applause, no lights. Just Eli, the piano, and the quiet hum of peace. He closed his eyes and saw her. A little girl sitting beside him, laughing as she reached for the high notes she could never quite hit. He smiled through the tears that formed. "I miss you, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice trembling. "But I hope you know, we made it. We finally made it." He finished the song, letting the last note linger in the air before fading into silence. The days that followed were peaceful. Eli continued teaching, and the students continued learning not just about music, but about life. He became more than a teacher. He was a listener, a mentor, sometimes even a friend. One afternoon, Victor came to his office with a folder in hand. "I wanted to show you something," he said with a nervous smile. Eli opened the folder. Inside were music sheets handwritten neatly. "You've been composing," Eli said. Victor nodded. "You told me once to play for the people who can't. I've been working on something inspired by that." Eli read the title at the top. "For the ones who listen." "It's beautiful," he said. "When are you going to play it?" "Next week," Victor replied. "At the scholarship concert. But I was hoping—" He hesitated. "I was hoping you'd play it with me." Eli looked surprised. "With you?" Victor nodded eagerly. "Yes, you on the piano, me on the violin. Just like that night. Only this time, together." Eli smiled, deeply touched. "I'd be honored." The concert hall was full that evening. Not as grand as the first performance, but still buzzing with excitement. People had come from nearby towns just to see Eli again, though he didn't think of it that way. For him, it was simply another night to share music. When he walked on stage with Victor, the audience clapped warmly. Some students stood, cheering. But Eli didn't see fame or recognition in their eyes. He saw respect, love, gratitude. The lights dimmed. Victor lifted his violin, and Eli's hands found their place on the piano. The piece began softly, almost like a conversation between two old friends. The violin spoke first, delicate, searching. Then the piano answered, gentle and steady. Together they created something pure and emotional, something that carried the feeling of every lesson learned, every pain healed. As the music grew, Eli felt something inside him lift. He wasn't playing for himself anymore. He was playing for his daughter, for the students, for every person who had ever been told they weren't enough. The final note rang out, long and warm, hanging in the air before the hall erupted into applause. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes. Victor turned to Eli, smiling. "We did it." Eli nodded, his eyes shining. "No, you did it. You found your heart." After the performance, people came to congratulate them. Reporters asked for interviews, students hugged Eli, and the director called it the most heartfelt duet the Academy has ever seen. But Eli slipped away quietly once the excitement began to fade. He stepped outside into the cool night air, taking a deep breath. The stars were out, twinkling like tiny piano keys across the sky. He smiled up at them. "That one was for you too, Lily," he whispered. Life continued in its quiet rhythm. Eli taught, laughed, and played when he could. His story became one of those tales told to new students, not as a legend but as a lesson. Don't ever underestimate anyone, the teachers would say. Once a janitor taught us more about music than any book ever could. Years passed. The academy grew, new faces arrived, and new voices filled the halls. But one thing never changed. Eli's room, with its golden words on the wall, remained a place where every student felt safe to make mistakes, to dream and to believe. One spring morning, a young girl stood at the door holding a violin. "Are you Mr. Eli?" she asked shyly. Eli smiled. "Just Eli is fine." "Come in," she hesitated. "My mom said you helped her when she was a student here. She said you taught her how to hear the music, not just play it." Eli's eyes softened. "Your mom was one of my favorites." "You play too?" The girl nodded. "A little." "Well," Eli said, patting the piano bench, "let's see what a little sounds like." She giggled and began to play. The notes were uneven at first, but her spirit was bright. Eli joined in softly on the piano, guiding her with each chord. By the end, she was smiling wide, the music flowing naturally. "That was wonderful," he said. "You've got your mother's hands." The girl beamed. "She said music saved her life." Eli smiled. "It has a way of doing that." That evening, as the sun set and the halls emptied, Eli sat alone again at the piano. His hair had gone whiter over the years, his hands a little slower, but the warmth in his eyes never faded. He played one last song, not one of sadness or loss, but of peace and gratitude. As he played, he thought of every student he had taught, every mistake that turned into melody, every note that healed a heart. When he finished, he looked around the quiet room and whispered, "Thank you." Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of music through the academy grounds. Some said they could still hear it even when no one was playing. A gentle, comforting tune that reminded them of Eli Turner, the man who taught the world that music wasn't about fame or titles, but about truth. And though years passed, the story of the humble janitor who became a master of hearts lived on, in every note, in every classroom, in every young musician who dared to believe that greatness begins not in what you have, but in who you are. Eli's piano still stands in that small room, a little worn but loved. And if you listen closely when the hall is quiet, you can almost hear him there, humming softly, smiling, as his fingers dance once more across the keys. The melody never really ended. It just kept going, carried forward by those he inspired. A timeless song about hope, kindness, and the music that lives in us all.